Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. Click subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Chances are you will find us there. You can also check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. I am still going through the short film blocks of the Renegade Film Festival, and I hope to continue those. I also hope to get back on track with series like Life Soundtrack and Leaving the Collection. I may be a bit later in the year, though, and that is at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. So this month it's funny because of the fact that, this is Women's History Month. We are in throughout March. And it was actually kind of fortuitous, the timing of my Renegade Film Festival podcast, which was the previous episode, because I had 3 wonderful interviews with female filmmakers on that one. For this episode, we are talking about a film directed by a female filmmaker. It is celebrating its 25th anniversary. It is a fairly controversial cult hit, but I do think is something of a cult classic, even if I have very mixed feelings about it. It is Mary Harron's American Psycho. Joining me to discuss the film is a first-time guest. He is the co-host of the Middle Class Film Class podcast. And please welcome to the episode, Pete. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it, man. I'm happy to be on the show.
So this being your first time on the podcast, I want to get you and I think we first connected because of the fact through Jason of Binge Movies, which is honestly
Correct.
how I get to know a lot of people on social media.
He's the hub that ties us all together.
Yeah. And I actually had him on a couple of episodes ago. We were starting my Fascism in Cinema series this year. And, but before we get into the bulk of the conversation about American Psycho, though, I wanted to get to know you a little bit more. What is it that drew you to discussing movies, to just loving movies in general?
So my mom was probably the one that instilled the love of movies into me. And she's a very unique person that just, doesn't necessarily confine to whatever, role you might think for person in her, walk of life or whatever. And she always had a eclectic style of music style and music taste and, movie taste as well. And I remember even as we had the standard kind of VHS movies when and I was born in 86. So the VHS market was starting to get cracking and accessible, by the time I was, 5, 6, 7 or so. And that's when the Disney movies came in and my grandma had all the VHS Disney movies with the puffy clamshell cases and all that kind of stuff. But the kind of stuff that my mom would have me watch as I got older, like we went and saw Ponette in theaters when I was like 13. And that was this French indie movie that we had to go probably a 40-mile drive just to go to a movie theater that was showing that movie.
Yeah.
She pulled me out of school to go watch it. And she's like, hey, we're going to go hang out together. I got the day off. I'm going to pull you out of school. You're not going to school today. Let's get Krispy Kreme donuts and let's go out to Mill Valley and go watch some foreign film. And I got to see, exposed to some interesting things. And, the stuff that really kind of scratched my itch on movies back then was like, Jurassic Park, Aliens, things like that, fun sort of actiony movies. And then of course the kind of stuff that you'd watch as a kid. And then ultimately, comedies was really where I landed. But then I got to watch some of these movies that really shined a light on a part of life that I never even thought about. And are you familiar with Ponette?
I remember the title. I don't remember if I've actually seen it, but I definitely remember the title.
So it's a 4-year-old girl, maybe 5, and she's in a car accident. Before the movie starts, the setup is that she was in a car accident, her dad was driving, and her mother was killed in the car accident.
Mm.
Now she is in, lost one of her parents, and she's got this cast on her arm throughout the whole movie because she was injured in the car accident. And her dad essentially dumps her off at an orphanage, and doesn't seem like a scumbag. He's just like dealing with that. He just killed his wife actually, and he's like, I can't deal with it here. Take her. And the whole movie was following this sweet little girl, learning about life and death and what the afterlife is and where mom is and did she want to leave me and now what do I do and why does dad want to leave me? Why am I here alone? And it's this complex wrestling of like true life and death from the perspective of this poor 5-year-old little girl. And it's like one of the most amazing performances from this little French actress.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so heartbreaking, but very good. And it has a great, resolution. But when I watched that, I was like, holy shit. I had no idea that movies could be like this.
Yeah.
So my thought about movies and why I challenge myself and expose myself to more challenging movies like that would be because, similar to riding a roller coaster, I don't ever want to be in mortal peril and the true danger of losing my life. Like that's not something I desire, but the illusion of it is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Crashing down on a roller coaster at 50 miles an hour straight at the ground and then being pulled out the last second is like, that's a feeling I never thought I would feel. So like watching a movie that is, gut wrenching or exposes you to a part of life that you didn't, know existed or didn't know how these people might feel. I feel like it's a really special thing. And it's a storytelling device, movies that is so robust and so you can go any way you want with it. There's really no rhyme or reason and there's no limits to what you can do with movies. And I really love that because I love telling stories and I love hearing stories. So, for me, that's what movies mean to me. I watched a ton of them all the time, life, certain years, maybe less than others. But me and my two friends, Joseph and Tyler, we used to talk about movies all the time and we just sit in the backyard and talk. And then, 5.5 years ago, Tyler said, well, my mom's got a podcast. We could do a podcast. We should do a podcast. It'd be fun. And I listened to tons of podcasts. I listen to more podcasts than I do music, at the time. So we gave it a shot. And my whole thing was, if we're going to do it, we have to have rules. We have to expect the best quality that we can expect for ourselves without having to, spend $1 million on equipment and stuff. We have to expect good production quality and consistency. If we're going to expect people to listen, and we say Monday is our release date, we got to be there every Monday. So that was really my only kind of expectation when we started out with the guys. And that was over 5 years ago. And it's been a really fun time ever since then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny. You talking about my mom, your mom reminds me a lot about my mom. And I will say, as somebody who's been quite literally near death a couple of times in my life, I definitely don't recommend it. The roller coaster movies is definitely the closest anybody should get for that. But no, I mean, listening to you talk about your mom, it does remind me a lot about my mom. My mom is somebody who, like, she has had very diverse tastes in music over the years. Yeah. And I mean, she just instilled that love of movies for me. I mean, I quite literally would not be doing what I'm doing now without her. And I think that is such a potent inspiration. And the thing is, it's like when you have that moment like you had with Ponette, where it's like it just opens everything up to you completely as a moviegoer. It just changes your entire perspective. For me, it was Tarkovsky's Stalker in the
cool,
like 97 was when that kind of eureka moment for world cinema was for me. And I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, movies can do this as well. And I like what this is doing. I enjoy the action movies still. I enjoy the comedies still. I really like what this is doing. So then you get into Bergman and Kurosawa and all of that. And no, it's just really exciting. And, I mean, I know for me, what was interesting was the moment when my taste in movies very much started to diverge from my mother's. I mean, she kind of stayed in her lane and kind of stayed within the types of genres she enjoyed, and I would then become the more adventurous one and start
Yeah.
looking into documentaries, starting looking deeper into foreign language films and all of that stuff. And it's just something that I mean continues to this day.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes I'll give a film recommendation to her, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna love this, and she watches it. She's like, that's just too much for me. I can't with that. Like she couldn't get on board with everything everywhere all at once.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a little too absurdist for her,
Mm-hmm.
and the sort of humor behind a lot of it. I mean, the Daniels either really on board with it or you're not.
Yeah.
So, but I'll give you another example. We just flew to Portugal last July, for my cousin's wedding. First time overseas, first time taking a really long flight like that, and it was like 19 hours,
Mm-hmm.
start to finish. So she said, "Why don't you download some movies onto your computer and bring your laptop, and we'll watch movies on the way there and the way back." And I go, "What do you want to watch?" And she goes, "I haven't seen a lot of the new stuff. So just pick like some movies from the last few years. Do you think I should watch that I haven't?" And I picked, it was The Northman. She loved that. Oh gosh, what was the other one we watched? Unicorn Wars. That was one that it was a big risk.
Okay.
It's a Spanish language animated movie about a fictional alternate universe where teddy bears are living creatures and unicorns are like they're at war. The teddy bears and the unicorns are at war with each other. Very dark, very depressing, and it has an overarching allegory for the creation of man and God. And it's like so bizarre and off like it's like Apocalypse Now, but with teddy bears.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched that and she loved it. And I can't remember what the other one we watched, but she loved it. And I was like, ooh, 3 for 3. I got 3 like kind of they could go either way picks with them, and we both had a great time watching them and then talking about them at length on the plane ride. And it just felt like the hours just passed by like that.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, you know, it's funny for me. Like my mom, the last up until recently, the last new movie her and I watched together in theaters was, well, actually, the last movie her and I watched in theaters was Toy Story 4. And I mean, there were a lot of other reasons. You know, I've not been shy about my mom's physical health and
yeah,
over the years on social media. And I mean, there were reasons for that. And so, as her health is kind of decreased, it's funny because of the fact that I've definitely, it's been more important for me to kind of stay in her lane of what she's familiar with, what she's comfortable with. But at the same time, there are movies where it's like, I think about them and it's like, I wonder if she'd like that. I wonder if that's a movie
yeah,
she might like. Or there's movies that she watched years and years ago, might have even forgotten about. That's like, I wonder what she'd think of that, rewatching that.
now,
If she
yeah,
would even remember that. And so, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot. I mean,
mhm.
admittedly, that right now it's hard to gauge, but it's like, you know, I mean, I like the fact that there are movies that I don't mind taking chances on movies. I don't mind
Yeah, me
taking
neither.
chances on movies with people that I care about. It's like I want to show the movies that I love to people that I love and see how it reacts to them. I mean, obviously, if I feel like it's going to be a good fit, I'll more likely prioritize those over
Yeah,
others. But at the same time, it's like they're you know, I just I was on a road trip this past week and I ended up watching The Fablemans, and it's like, oh man, this would be a really good one. I don't know. I don't know if it's one that you would necessarily be into
haven't
at
got
this
that one
point,
yet.
but it really it I know it's a personal one for me. I absolutely adore it. But yeah, I mean something like Flow, which, you know, I
Yeah, Flow's
just
a good
showed
one.
her, and they're, you know, one of my favorite movies from the past couple of years, Hundreds of Beavers. It's like that.
Oh,
I feel like that
hell
would be right up her alley.
Oh, good.
But
Love that movie.
yeah.
Oh, I went on my letterbox back to June of last year. It was The Kid Detective. That was the
Yeah.
other one I watched on the plane. You seen that one?
No, I've not seen that one.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that Unicorn Wars, you gotta check those both out. They're real strong recommends that came out in the last 5 years.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I'll definitely make a point of adding those to the list and hopefully getting to them. That's the key, is getting to them.
I know. Yeah, my list keeps growing, and I add them at a faster rate that I watch them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like between podcast, movies to watch, movies to review to watch, and everything. It's like, good lord, it's like, when am I?
Who has the time?
No. But well, before we get started into American Psycho, where can people find you online?
So the easiest place to find us, we're directing most people to the YouTube channel now. So we transitioned from just an audio only podcast to video in last January. And we've been working really hard to gain a larger audience. And, the hard part about podcasting is it doesn't pay anything.
Yeah.
And it's like it's fun and it's edifying and stuff. So I'll do it regardless. But having a consistent schedule and being beholden to people who are counting on you to be there for them to for their weekly watch or their weekly listen or whatever, it can be taxing and you sacrifice things in your life. And if you can make a little bit of money on it, great, awesome. We just now got monetized on YouTube. We just hit the level where we can actually make a little bit. And so we're directing people to the YouTube channel. Just go there and look for Middle Class Film Class is the name of the show. If you're not a video watcher, totally fine. Everything is on any podcast stream you could think of. Even ones you've never heard of, it's out there. I guarantee it. And it's just, Middle Class Film Class. It's black and white logo. It's the three of our faces. Super easy to find.
Excellent. So the movie that we are talking about is Mary Harron's American Psycho, based on the novel by Bret Easton Ellis, written by Mary Harron and Guinevere Turner. Stars Christian Bale in probably his big breakout as an adult. I mean, he had been in Empire of the Sun, which was his first film. He had been in Newsies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This was his big breakout. This was his moment as an adult, and he plays Patrick Bateman, somebody on Wall Street who basically moonlights as a serial killer. And he has, and it's funny because of the fact that, so I will admit this, I'd heard about this movie when it came out, and even before it came out, because it was originally one of the original stars of it was going to be Leonardo DiCaprio, and that never worked. That never happened.
Yeah.
And they went with Bale, and I'd heard about it at the time, but I'd never gotten to it for one reason or another, and I finally decided to add it to my repertory reviews 5 years ago. So I watched it then, and it's interesting because of the fact that, I wondered whether it was one of those movies that it'd been built up so much to me over the years that just kind of, for some reason, it just bounced.
Didn't live up to the hype. Yeah.
Rewatching it, I'll admit, I think I like it a little bit more, but also I also feel very similarly to it than I did then. What was your first experience with this movie?
So I didn't really know what to take away from it when I saw it first, and I think I saw it relatively near release. So I was in high school still.
Yeah.
And I just watched it kind of like a serial killer movie. I saw the title, and it's about a guy killing people, and he's a psychopath or whatever, and that's all I knew about it and all I expected. And I don't think I was paying attention, I guess, enough to the themes and to anything else. And I also was still just a kid, basically doing kid stuff. So I didn't really remember it being particularly memorable, but I do remember having a fond memory of it. Only later, after I'd rewatched it as an adult and kind of forced myself to revisit it and heard some of the praise about it, I'm like, yeah, I should probably go rewatch that thing again. and then I realized that it is a straight ahead 100% dark comedy.
Yeah.
And if you watch it in that context and it's mocking the main character rather than idolizing the main character, it's so much more. It's a much easier pill to swallow, and it's a much more genuine movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know it comes into the pantheon of movies like Fight Club or Joker or Taxi Driver, that people are like, well, if you took this message away from it, you're sympathizing with the main character, and this is not somebody, Scarface, to look up to.
Right.
He's a piece of shit, and he's the main character, and he's okay to have a main character who is the scumbag, as long as you're not like rooting for this person.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's arguments in the literature world and the art world about whether that's good or not. You make a piece of art that kind of it's a rally cry for the wrong side of the aisle that you don't really want, and you're like, oh shit, I did that. Okay, well, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's their fault. That's not my fault. So I don't buy into that. I think that you should have enough media literacy to be able to say, yes, this is the main character, but yes, you're supposed to hate him.
Yeah, and that's fine if you do. I mean, it's not it's not to the film's detriment in a lot of cases if you hate the main character, unless you're supposed to like him. And it's very clear in American Psycho that you're not supposed to like him.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, you name checking all of those other films, Joker, Taxi Driver, Scarface, Fight Club, absolutely spot on, because of the fact that they do all fit into that realm of films where it's disaffected, alienated men who do pretty sociopathic things.
Mm.
And I think, and the thing is, it's like I have mixed feelings about a lot of those films. I mean, some of them I feel like do genuinely hit the mark in every way, shape, or form. The thing about American Psycho for me, and I agree with you, you do have to absolutely look at as a dark comedy. It's not a movie. It's not a movie it's intended to be taken seriously at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing where I kind of hit the brick wall with this movie, and it certainly feels like it's an intentional choice on Heron's perspective as she's telling this story, is that it goes so over the top in the second half to like goofy slasher movie that it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about it now, because of the fact that it's like, I understand if you just based on the first half of things until he really starts to go off the rails, I think it's an excellent movie, and it gets the tone right, gets the performances are perfect. As it moves on, though, it gets more and more ridiculous, and it's like, I understand that as a choice. I'm not sure if it was necessarily the right choice, though.
Sure. Yeah, almost like from the moment when Chloe, not Chloe Sevigny, the first prostitute, the blonde one with the bad bangs.
Yeah.
When she gets in the room for the second time and she's running away, and that's the famous chainsaw scene before the chainsaw scene. She opens the closet and there's like 2 corpses hanging there in bags. You're like, okay, that was very different tone than the first half of the movie. You're like, are we to believe that this is his kill den and all these bodies are just chilling there and everyone's okay with it? They've been there for days, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with that. I also think that once you get to the even more ridiculous stuff where he shoots at the police car and it explodes, he realizes it's ridiculous. He even looks at his gun like, did I do that? And then just keeps going. You're like, oh, so he's having a psychosis or something. Yeah. And then the conversation with the lawyer even further, drives that point home. And then you have to reevaluate the entire movie. Like, how much of this he doesn't even say that he's Patrick Bateman,
Yeah.
he's completely calling him a different name, and you're like, is he Bateman or is he, you know? So in certain circles, he's different people, and he's living like multiple lives or whatever. And it's like, it just, to me, that aspect of it, like if they didn't put that part in there, I would have probably dropped a whole star for me, you know, on the movie. But that once they start implanting that what's real, what's not
Yeah.
aspect into it, it makes the character even more unhinged.
Hmm. No, I agree with that. And, you know, I mean, I think one of the things that, you know, obviously a big part of the satire in this film comes from the fact that it's set in the 80s and he's clearly a Wall Street douchebag. Like
Yeah.
that's the archetype he's playing. And,
Yeah.
you know, th- we have this notion of them from the movies, from, you know, people's hazy nostalgic not necessarily nostalgic memories, but memories of the 80s of being like coked up, greed is good, like,
Yeah.
you know, this is how they were, even though it probably wasn't quite as extreme as it's usually portrayed. But at the same time, so the idea of him being moonlighting as a serial killer is not too terribly surprising,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, it's like once you get to the point where it's like, oh, he's got a kill room. Well, how is nobody complaining about the smell of those
Yeah. Yeah.
those
Exactly.
bodies in there? It's like, yeah, I think you do kind of have to take the. I do think there's something to be said that the to a certain extent you do kind of have to take the second half of the movie at face value, or not quite at face value, because of the fact that it's clearly playing with our idea of what exactly is going on
Yeah. Well, there's,
because of the police chase at the
yeah.
after he kills the woman at the ATM.
I
And
was gonna say the ATM itself, when as
yeah.
soon as it flashes "Feed me a stray cat," you're like, okay, what? Now we're totally in cuckoo banana land.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's one scene specifically that it I didn't really tag it. I've probably seen this movie 20 times, and I'm sure a lot of people would say that's a red flag. But I think it's just so funny, and it's so over the top, and it's a
Yeah.
great takedown. I love the fact that Bret Easton Ellis is considered a misogynistic pig prick to almost anybody who knows him, and they allowed the movie to be written, adapted into a screenplay by a woman and directed by a woman, and I'm sure that he hates that, and I love that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to love about it, and on surface level, it might seem like something that you shouldn't like,
Mhm.
but I've seen the movie a billion times, love it, and one scene that I tagged me on this last time I watched it was after he kills. Can't remember who it was he kills, but he kills somebody. I think it's Jared Leto's character. Yeah, it is Jared Leto's character. It's Paul Allen, and he kills him. He puts him in a bag and he drags him downstairs. And it's like he's dragging this corpse bag through the lobby, and
Yeah.
the bellhop's just like, okay. And you're like, no bellhop would do that. Everybody would see that and say, you know,
Yeah.
what is that? You know, do you need help with this? Or should I call the cops or just not say anything? But it almost like plays to either the apathy of the society at the time, and everyone's got their own life to live and nobody cares about what might be happening downstairs, or it's just this is a heightened reality where he's operating outside the bounds of our mortal world, you
Yeah.
know, or you know.
Yeah.
So-
No, I agree with that completely, because of the fact that, and you know, it's funny because of the fact that this was, you know, this was like the second movie in a row after like Fight Club where Jared Leto's basically playing this asshole who's basically a follower in every way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. Like he's basically a kid's ass, and he either dies or gets the shit kicked out of him. You know, and so like, I mean, there's certainly a lot you can say about Leto as an actor, as an individual, but he plays awful people as well as pretty much anybody in the industry. I mean, you know, there's probably a reason for that, but at the same time, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like he knows he just understands that he understands that assignment really well. And yeah,
Yeah.
I love the fact that, and it's very clear that the female perspective that Heron and Turner bring to the screenplay, bring to the direction in this movie
Uh-huh.
is essential for this movie working as well as it does.
Mhm.
Because there's, and I mean, I've never seen any of the sequels, so
I haven't either.
and I'm not interested. But I have to imagine that, like, if any of the male filmmakers who were originally attached to this, who had been attached to this over the times, I don't think it will have hit as hard as it does when Mary Herron, who's a damn good filmmaker, really is. I think she did that I Shot Andy Warhol movie as well a few years before, and she did Notorious Babe-Age. And so, yeah, she's got a good track record.
I've never really seen any of her other stuff, but I've heard good things.
But yeah, and I will never forget the documentary "This Film Is Not Yet Rated," and she's talking about the MPA battles with this movie, where it's like they basically objected to the entire tone of the movie. It wasn't like, it's like, how am I supposed to fix that?
Yeah, you can't note that. It's like that's the film.
It just doesn't make any sense. And I mean, it's like this movie has to be extreme. This movie's tone has to be dark in order for it to work.
Yeah. And I know that talking about understanding the assignment, Christian Bale understanding, the character Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
He fought hard to be this character. Like, it was Leonardo DiCaprio was, as you mentioned, Ewan McGregor was a second choice. And Christian Bale specifically called McGregor and said, "Don't take this movie. I want that movie. That's my movie." He urged him. And I don't know if they were like how close they were or not, but I know they're both, some from the UK of somewhere. Bale's Welsh and McGregor's Irish, I think, right?
Yeah, I believe you're right.
Something like that.
Either Irish or Scottish, I can't remember, because he wasn't Trainspotting. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. And but he fought so hard for it, and he got it, and he was told it was career suicide. He's told, you're never gonna, like, this is not the role you want to attach yourself to. And like, I can't think of early Christian Bale career without thinking of just how great he was in this movie. He took the physical transformation aspect of it to a really strong level, because like there's not an ounce of fat on the guy.
Yeah.
He's doing his morning routine talk, and that dead look of him looking in the mirror when he's peeling the chemical peel off of his face mask.
Yeah.
You're like, there ain't nothing there. There's nothing. Have you heard the trivia bit about who he based the character off of?
Oh, I feel like I've seen it at some point, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
He said he saw an interview with Tom Cruise on the David Letterman show, and he said what he saw there was an intense kindness projected, but with nothing behind his eyes, like no soul. And he said that's exactly what the character needs, is like a front of what a human person would be with nothing on the inside. And that just cracks me up. So. There's a lot of interesting filmmaking techniques too, specifically, Mary Herron. One of the other trivia bits I thought was fascinating is, when Willem Dafoe's character is this detective that's kind of on the hunt, and maybe he's got an inkling that Bateman's got something to do with Paul Allen's disappearance, maybe he doesn't. Every scene that they shot together where Dafoe is interrogating him or just having a conversation with Bateman, they took three different times. Not necessarily 3 takes, but probably multiple takes of each style. And she says she shot every scene, one version where he thought that Bateman was guilty, one where he wasn't sure that Bateman was guilty, and one he thought he was 100% innocent. So if you see sometimes during the conversation, he'll ask him, am I being cross-examined? And he'll go, do you feel like you're being cross-examined? And he like glares at him aggressively, and then the next cut back, he goes, oh, okay. Anyways. and they would use multiple pieces from the conversation from multiple takes. And it's good because it keeps you guessing. Because the whole time I'm watching it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
still to this time, every time I rewatch it, I'm thinking, is he just using him because he's a guy who's got a lot of information about Paul Allen, and it's going to be useful to him, or is he really like lining this guy up for prosecution?
Right. No, I love Defoe in this movie. I mean, is one of the best performances he's ever given. I love him in this and his back and forth with Bale, and probably for that very reason, because of the fact that you are, even though you have an idea that he probably knows more than he's laying on, you also, because of those multiple takes that Aaron is pulling from, you're not quite sure. And
Yeah.
and that is another layer, like the scene where he's dragging the body through the hotel lobby. It's like where it's like, okay, I think, yeah, the reality of this world is starting to shift into a lack of reality, where it's probably much more internal than we're probably intended to think. And
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you look at all of his colleagues are essentially look the exact same.
Mhm.
I mean, they could be literally anybody. Like
Yeah,
are
they're interchangeable. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean it. So I do think that that is a benefit. I think, to the more I'm thinking about it now in this context of this discussion, the more it's like, yeah, it's hard to look at this as anything. It's not necessarily a movie that is set in a very specific reality that becomes completely unhinged. Although, I mean, I think there could be some accuracy to that as well. But it's a movie where it's like we're into. I mean, he's telling us that it's through his perspective the entire time.
Yeah.
He's the one narrating it, so it's like this is probably his reality, and we're getting looking completely unhinged mind.
There's even a couple other things in the movie, like really small details that lend you to feel like it's not the real world. You're not taking it at face value for our world. Like, for example, when he goes to the Mexican restaurant with Paul Allen, and he's sitting there like, what a place, Bateman. This place is completely dead. We're supposed to be seen here or whatever, And the guy's giving him, it's like a Chevy's or something, or Chili's, it's like it looks like just a chain Mexican restaurant, like nothing fancy. And the guy's got the menu that looks just as similarly laid out, but less fancy than all these fancy restaurants are going to.
Yeah.
And I get it when they go to the Espas, and one of the funniest lines of the whole movie, I was on the edge of tears when we came to Espas because we didn't think we were going to get a good table. And you're like, you're on the edge of tears because of you're not going to get you're still going to get a spot. It's just not, it's so weird. Anyways, I understand that menu. It's like the super bougie and it's all cut from stainless steel and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, that's great.
Yeah.
And then they go to the Mexican restaurant and they don't linger on it, but he's got the 1-page blank slate piece of wood menu that's got rope around the edge, like it's rustic sort of whatever. And it's like, that would never be in one of those restaurants. But it's like, that's the parallel they're drawing. It's almost like a cartoon version of what like a poor person's restaurant would be like compared to these ultra rich restaurants.
Yeah.
And you're watching it and you're like, what kind of restaurant is this? It's the obsession with restaurant culture, the obsession with Bateman of being relevant when it comes to modern music, I thought was interesting. And his obsession with also seeming like he is a well-adjusted, compassionate individual. Like even the very first scene when they're talking, the 3-4 guys are kind of talking shit, and he says something about somebody being Jewish, and Bateman kind of pipes up and says something, and he's like, "What are you going on about, Bateman?" He goes, "Just saying, cool it with the anti-Semitic marks, would you?"
Yeah.
It's like right from the get-go, he's putting this front on like he's a virtuous sort of individual. And it's like, that is a true message of like a or characteristic of like a sociopath, like a
Mhm.
psychopath. You take what human emotion like that you've observed in others, and you go, well, I'm just going to adopt that so that I seem like the rest of them.
Right.
And I think it's very interesting and very compelling.
Yeah, I mean Bale was brilliant in this movie, and I love. I mean, the soundtrack to this movie, how they got the rights to all of these songs, I will never understand. I am I applaud the artists who gave them the
Yeah.
licenses for this music so they could use it in this movie.
Supposedly, yes. Supposedly that was the highest cost of the entire production was the music rights.
I completely believe it.
Yeah, me too.
Because I mean, you're talking about absolutely iconic songs and throughout this film, and I mean, it's one of the things that's really interesting about this is the score, because of the fact that it's very contrast to the songs, which are obviously very iconic, very much put you in this specific time and place. And yeah, Bateman's musicologist coming out is just always hysterical to listen to. It's like, to your point, it's basically somebody trying to sound more intelligent than they
Yeah.
really are.
Yeah. Or at
And-
least connected to the average person.
Yeah, because the average person does not give a shit about what he's saying.
No,
It's
about
like-
Robert Palmer and Whitney Houston.
Yeah, or Phil Collins. I mean,
Yeah.
in Genesis. But no, and I love that the score in this movie, it really is it really does signal that this is a dark comedy.
Mhm.
Like that is one of the things I can say about John Cale's score, is that it very much points to, yeah, this is a dark comedy. You're not supposed to necessarily take this as a serious piece of, I mean, it's a serious film, but it's also not serious because
Mhm.
this story is ludicrous, and Patrick Bateman is a ludicrous human being even before you get to the
Killing. Yeah.
fact that he's killing people. There are so many people in this movie. Like, this is like Justin Theroux, Josh Lucas, Matt Ross, Jared Leto, Defoe, Chloe Sevigny, who you've already talked about, Reese Witherspoon, Samantha Mathis.
Reggie Cathy even does a really small cameo.
Yeah, it's
I love
like,
Reggie Cathy.
Good lord! I mean, this is. I mean, even this is such a loaded cast. It's insane. Like, it is a credit to Heron that
Yeah.
for the amount of money this movie was made for. I mean, this is the type of thing
$7 million, I think.
this is the type of thing that we're missing in a lot of movies, even smaller budget movies, where it's like we're missing these movies with these really expansive casts. Now, granted, this was like, by the time she was cast in this, Boys Don't Cry hadn't come out yet, so Chloe Sevigny was not as noticeable as she was going to be by the time this movie came out.
Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon was on the way up. Legally Blonde had not yet happened.
I love her. She
Justin Theroux, obviously, had not. Mulholland Drive was a year away, but I mean, but Defoe's Defoe, and so it's like you've got these. This is the type of cast that can only be brought together for a movie like this at this time, and I really love that.
I consider this movie like a lightning in a bottle type movie because
Yeah.
I don't think anybody expected it to do what it did. And to be fair, at the time, it really wasn't revered as it is now. I have a couple versions of this on physical media.
Mhm.
I have a couple steelbooks, one German version that's got a great box art on it, and then one that's a American release, Lionsgate release, that's it's got a transparent slip of him pulling the mask off
Oh,
of his face.
nice.
Really cool. It's one of my favorite steelbooks. But on that version, there's a commentary track with Mary Herron, and not this past time I watched it for this show, but last time I watched it, probably 6 months ago, I watched it with the commentary version, And it's really interesting because they recorded the commentary 15, 20 years later, something like that. And Heron is talking specifically about a lot of the scenes that have been memed since then, like the business card scene.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh yeah, here's the business card scene. I love when people send me a parody version of this business card scene, and I've seen it with pictures of cats. I've seen it with drawings of dicks. I've seen take your pick, and it's like the most ridiculous scene, and they make it even more ridiculous. And it's so funny to watch this movie that we made that we thought was going to be great turn into like this cultural weird joke in a good way.
Yeah.
And it's like that. There's the clip of him at the end saying, "Why not? Why not, you stupid bastard?" It's like that's been to death. Even him, just his little facial twitches and stuff of him laughing at stuff, or like the transparent raincoat and dancing around with the axe, and you like it's in the news. It's like all this stuff is so it's been memed out to a point where it's like you either are going to be doing that to a property that is absolute trash, or something that is good, but it is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of meme fodder in this movie, and as you watch it, so you're like, oh, that's where that meme comes from. Oh, that's where that meme comes from.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, I think that was, I don't know that that was exactly my experience watching it for the first time a few years ago because of the fact, but I mean, I knew what, because I had seen clips over the years, so it's like I knew what some of those memes were from,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I'd never like seen the entire. It just was a matter of never seeing the entire movie. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, you look at the business card scene is a perfect example where it's like it's just a bunch of assholes trying to, it's a dick measuring contest for assholes who think that the
yeah,
right font, the right type of paper for your card gives you status. And it's like it points to the absurdity of this entire world. It's like, why are you're not supposed to take this world seriously at all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's one that I've enjoyed through many iterations throughout the years, and for different reasons throughout the years. Um, but I do think that you kind of have to preface that when you're kind of recommending a movie like this to somebody, to say, your first watch through you may not get the experience that you want, because I didn't get it,
Yeah.
and you didn't get it either, and it's not for everybody.
No.
But I think start to finish, it's such a weird take on this sort of a character, and to be honest, just a purely iconic character in general.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's something that's so lost nowadays in film culture and film discourse on social media, where it's this idea that it's okay if a movie is not for you,
Mhm.
and it's okay if a movie is not for anybody else.
Mhm.
That's perfectly fine. Not everybody has to like everything, because then culture would be boring.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I mean, the thing is, it's like I I'm very mixed on this film, but I respect why people like it. I understand why people like it. And
Mhm.
it's like, it's funny, you talk about the, you know, you bring up the fact that you've seen it so many times over the years, and it's like, oh, typical film, bro, like in movie like American Psycho.
Yeah.
But you at least get the satire in it.
Hmm?
That's the thing. It's like, you're not saying, oh, go Patrick Bateman. This guy's such an
Yeah. No.
awesome guy. No, he's
Yeah.
no, that's not it at all.
It's a person
I I
to
enjoy
be.
it because it's entertaining and it's absurd. I mean,
Yeah.
and I can see the absurdity in that character. And I mean, I think that is, it's so lost in, I mean, to your point, it's media literacy, where it's like the idea that we enjoy watching a movie that can be seen as problematic doesn't necessarily mean we enjoy the movie for the reasons you think we enjoy the movies. I've
Correct.
seen Fight Club I don't know how many times over the years.
Yeah,
I
me
don't
too.
enjoy the movie because I agree with Tyler Durden. I enjoy the movie because of the fact that I'm entertained immensely by what David Fincher's trying to say and how he's saying it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Fight Club. Come for the Brad Pitt fighting in the basement with his shirt off. Stay for the irony against toxic masculinity.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is another, and case in point, this is a very early. This is another early takedown of toxic masculinity, and I mean, this is where I think having a female director is important in this movie because of the fact that she sees right through Patrick. Like they see right through Patrick when they're writing this movie, and when she's, and importantly, Christian Bale does too. Like you can tell in his performance, it's so choreographed. You can tell he's got the biggest grin on his face between takes because he realizes just how ridiculous this character is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and props to him for spotting it and realizing that this is a good role. I mean, he's honestly, he's one of my favorite working actors. He's been that way for probably the last 10 years or so. Everything I see him in, he's fantastic. He never phones in a performance, even the smaller stuff that like you don't really like, didn't make big blockbuster sort of movies. He's killed it in. I watched one not too long ago. It was called Hostels, I think. It was he was a Confederate general, and he was supposed to be basically shepherding a chief and his family from their incarceration in the Midwest, somewhere in the plains, out to their ancient burial grounds, basically their sacred burial grounds, so he could be, finish his life there. And he hated the savages, according to him. And that was a great complex role, and it was a movie I'd never even heard of before. Just kind of stumbled upon it on Hulu, I think. And I'm like, man, Bale's so good in this, so good. On a nothing movie no one's heard of. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. I just didn't heard of it. But it's like he can't miss. He's so good.
Well, it's funny. Have you seen Equilibrium?
Yeah, we covered it on the show.
Okay. Oh, okay.
and American Psycho too.
Yeah, that's another one. It's like if you haven't seen the movie, it's essentially Fahrenheit 451, but in the style of The Matrix. If you want to look at it that way,
yeah, that's good. 1984, Fahrenheit 451, The Matrix, all had a.
It's a really good movie. It's a fun action thriller. It basically got dumped because of the fact that it was, Miramax and Dementia was notorious for this over the years, just dumping movies over the year, just unceremoniously because they picked up so much product that, if it wasn't a big Oscar contender, we'll put it out in the middle of like October and just let die, and it's a really good movie though. I had a coworker at Regal who was obsessed with the movie for a couple of years, and it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it.
Very fun.
It's in my collection, but yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, it's The Matrix and Fahrenheit 451. I get it. Okay. It's
great cast too. Sean Bean, Taye Diggs, William Fichtner.
Yeah.
Christian Bale, of course. But I have a theory that, it's not even, doesn't need to be much of a theory. It's just following his career. But, American Psycho gave Bale legitimacy and also made people realize, wow, this guy is physically imposing presence because he's just absolutely cut and yoked in this.
Yeah.
In Psycho. And then he got Equilibrium and basically proved that he could do physical stuff too, like martial arts, because this is basically gun fu. It's like the birthplace of gun fu, which led him to basically get cast as Batman. And it's like, I know that was until 6 years later or whatever, but like you can't take a risk like Batman on an unknown and say he has nothing in his catalog that shows that he can actually do physical activity and physical fighting and stuff like that. So once people saw Equilibrium, they're like, okay, yeah, that's really fun. But Bale, that guy's got the goods, and he's a good actor. Shit, let's put him as Bruce Wayne.
Wasn't American Psycho one of the things that got him on Chris Nolan's radar for Bruce Wayne? I
I
feel like
wouldn't be
it
surprised.
probably, yeah, I feel like it was. Just because of the fact that, the jump from Patrick Bateman in this movie to his Nolan's Bruce Wayne, at least, is not that big. I mean, it
Mhm.
really isn't. Like, obviously, they're
Oiled
both,
rich kid.
yeah, they're both privileged white
Yeah.
guys who feel like they're entitled to the life that they to a certain life, and
Mhm.
they go about they go about exacting justice in their own ways. And
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, I think Bruce Wayne ends up certainly being a more empathetic character in that trilogy. But and
Definitely
funny,
gross.
we're actually going to be talking about that trilogy in the next episode of this movie in this in the podcast in a way. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where yeah, I can't imagine Nolan not seeing this and go, "Oh, there's my Bruce Wayne right there." Like
Yeah.
he's somebody who has to put on a figurative mask
Well,
to get
before
through life.
yeah, and before he was given Batman, he also worked with Nolan on The Prestige, which is
Oh
my
yeah,
fa-
yeah,
yeah, that's my
that was around the same time. Yeah,
yeah, that was 2 years before, and that's my favorite Nolan movie.
yeah,
Love The Prestige, one of the greatest scripts in my opinion for something that has a twist reveal sort of a thing. It really is. It's great. Love it
hmm
so much, and it's a heart wrencher every single time for multiple reasons. Um, but I know his career. He was great in Harsh Times.
hmm
Great, fantastic in The Machinist. Reign of Fire,
yeah,
good. Played a similar character in 310 to Yuma's Reign of Fire. That was fantastic.
hmm
Rescue Dawn, heartbreaking
yes,
movie. God, I just the emotions in that movie and the kind of humanity or lack of humanity. And then Dickie Eklund in The Fighter.
yeah.
It's like shit.
I mean, you think no, I mean, and I completely forgot about the machinist. That was I believe that was definitely one that no one checked as yeah, this I need to get Bale in this movie.
Yeah,
So,
and the discipline to get to that size
yeah.
for anybody. And he went from Equilibrium to The Machinist, and then bulked up for Batman Begins after that. I mean, he
Yeah.
did Harsh Times and then Batman Begins, but still, it was a 2 year run from going from The Machinist to Batman, and he was, yeah, it's that's crazy.
And to your point, you brought up earlier the idea that this is, it takes so much more discipline. It takes more, like, we obviously think about the machinist, you think about how gaunt he is in the fighter with his
Oh yeah,
character, but at the same time, you think about the discipline it takes to sculpt his body as well as his mannerisms for a character like Bateman. And
hmm
you hit on it earlier in the episode where it's like it is a transformation. It's not a subtle transformation we often think about it is because as being one because movie stars are supposed to be attractive people and they're supposed to, we're supposed to think of them as attractive in the
yeah,
context of movie. So, but it's as dramatic a transformation as his work in Machinist and The Fighter is. And so it's like, yeah, you can't help but be impressed with what he does in this movie.
yeah. I mean, even later on in his career, he was Dick Cheney in Vice, and he gained a ton of weight for that.
Yeah.
And then immediately after that was Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah.
And like I love Ford v Ferrari.
Oh, I
It's
love that movie too.
I'm a big car guy. I work in the automotive field in general. I have a couple of old school cars, and I'm not much of a horsepower head. Like I like more like low and slow. But that movie just puts you in it.
Hmm.
And I watched that movie, a couple years later. Like I didn't see it on initial release, and I watched it at home. So damn good. And I rewatched it again right before Ferrari came out, and I watched Ferrari, and I was so disappointed. Ferrari. I did not like that movie at all.
Yeah. So, Pete, do you have anything more that you wanted to say about American Psycho before we wrap it up?
Mm, not really. I'd say, if you're on the fence or if you've only seen it the one time and it was earlier to the release and it's something that you just don't see the appeal, go into it thinking of it as a dark comedy, give it another shot, and that just because a character is the main character doesn't mean that the movie is not taking the piss out of them,
Yeah.
and their ilk. I one of my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movies is Phantom Thread, and I watched that in theaters, so excited for it, and was like, Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson, the band's back together.
Yeah.
They're gonna recreate There Will Be Blood Part 2, and I was so excited for it. And what I got was not that, and I was very disappointed. I didn't hate it, but I just was like, this is very not what I wanted. And then I rewatched it at home later with my girlfriend, and she was like, "Oh, this is hilarious. This movie's hilarious." I'm like, "Oh, I guess it could be considered a comedy." And the guy's a total insane person, Reynolds Woodcock. And I watched it again as a comedy. I'm like, "Oh, he's like a petty bitch queen,
Yeah.
the queen of pettiness of this, of this era." And it was like watching it again. I'm like, "Oh, this is really funny." So I changed my perspective on Phantom Thread, and I also changed my perspective on American Psycho, and it became one of my favorites.
Yeah. It is. It's definitely a polarizing movie. I think going in with the awareness that this was directed by a woman and written by two women, I think helps.
Yeah.
I think it will help you realize that what the game that this movie's on from Jump Street, if you realize that. And I do think, their performances in this, there's a reason Patrick Bateman in this movie is iconic. And there's a reason Bale's character in this movie is iconic. And it's not because we admire him, it's because of the fact that we see the absurdity in him.
Mhm.
And I really love that in a movie like this. And you mentioning Femme Thread is a great example of another movie that it really jars your expectations. There Will Be Blood. I mean, the thing is, and you look at There Will Be Blood, Daniel Plainview is not an empathetic character.
No.
He is as big a piece of shit as anybody in the movies of the past 20 years. And actually another movie we're going to be discussing on the podcast later this year.
Right.
So check that out. Pete, before we go, where can people find you and find the podcast online?
So you can check out Middle Class Film Class anywhere you download, you subscribe to Sonic Cinema or any other podcasts. But the best place you can find us is on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search for Middle Class Film Class. We stream the show live every Saturday. Just before I got hopped on with you, we just finished a 3-hour stream. And we release 2 episodes a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. Mondays are Gab and Chatter, which is movie news and streaming recommendations from all 3 of us. And then Wednesdays is a deep dive review. But this episode was our last episode with that format. We're completely changing the format, and we're moving to every month is a new subject. So, and that'll be rotating. That'll start in the month of April. So give it a shot. And if you're not doing anything Saturdays, midday or whatever, it doesn't have to be at 12:30 because we go until about 3:30. Just hop on the chat and say hi. And we got a bunch of dedicated listeners that are always kind of in there and yucking it up in the chat. And it's a very fun show. It's funny. It's recorded pretty much uncensored and unedited, like a morning show, but just much longer format and centered around movies. So give us a shot if it sounds like it's up your alley. And, we have 500 and plus episodes. So there's a lot of back catalog. If you like what you hear, you can go back and binge it.
Excellent. Well, Pete, thank you very much for joining me. It was great to talk to you finally.
Hey, man, I appreciate it.
Definitely look forward to it in the future. More in the future.
Good. happy to, anytime you got something. And I tell a lot of the people who I'll go on shows with, I got no kids. My weekends are free. So and I watch a ton of movies. So if you're like, oh man, this person dropped out last second, something came up, just give me a holler. I can usually squeeze a movie in and talk about it with you. All
Excellent. Sounds good.
right, thanks, Brian.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Pete for joining me on the podcast tonight. It was great to talk to him for the first time. I've been, like I said, he's somebody that I've known from social media for a while, and I talked about having him on the podcast a while back, and we finally made it work with American Psycho. And I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Thank you very much for listening. As always, this is going to be it for this episode of the Sonic Cinema podcast. As we kind of hinted at, we're going to be talking a little bit Dark Knight trilogy, but from a different perspective that you might be expecting in this next upcoming episode. We are also going to be talking about There Will Be Blood later this year, and that's going to be an interesting discussion. We got a lot of different things going on. Based on how my personal life is going, I do hope to still cover at least some of the Atlanta Film Festival. I may not get to as much as I usually do, but the fact of the matter is it's one of those things where we will definitely get to what I can on that, because I do love covering that year in and year out. And even if it's just the virtual part at the end of the festival or with select screenings along the way, I definitely hope I can still cover that. But it just depends on how my work schedule goes, depends on how my personal schedule goes. But that's going to be it for the podcast. This episode of the podcast. Continue to check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema, as well as the Sonic Cinema podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, at Apple, YouTube, Google, well, not Google anymore, Spotify, Good Pods, basically wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, you can also check me out at In Their Own League, as well as www.sonic-cinema.com. Thank you very much.